the central mountains. The normal dogleg through Kandahar was flatter, easier, and free of snow, but it was also longer and controlled in parts by the Taliban. The country had been at war for 25 years. The new government had been in place for only 2 weeks. There was no electricity between Herat and Kabul, no television, and no T-shirts. Villages combined medieval etiquette with new political ideologies. In many houses, the only piece of foreign technology was a Kalashnikov, and the only global brand was Islam. All that had made Afghanistan seem backward, peripheral, and irrelevant now made it the center of the world's attention. The country is quite covered by darkness, so that people outside it cannot see anything in it, and no one dares go in for fear of the darkness. Nevertheless, men who live in the country round about say that they can sometimes hear the voices of men, and horses neighing, and cocks crowing, and thereby that some kind of folks live there, but they do not know what kind of folk they are. The Travels of Sir John Mandeville, 1360. The new civil service. I watched 2 men enter the lobby of the Hotel Muwafaq. Most Afghans seem to glide up the centre of the lobby staircase with their shawls trailing behind them like Venetian cloaks. But these men wore Western jackets, walked quietly, and stayed close to the banister. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was the hotel manager. "Follow them." He had never spoken to me before. "I'm sorry, no," I said. "I am busy." "No, they are from the government." I followed him to a room on a floor I didn't know existed, and he told me to take off my shoes and enter alone in my socks. The 2 men were seated on a heavy blackwood sofa beside an aluminium spittoon. They were still wearing their shoes. I smiled. They did not. The lace curtains were drawn, and there was no electricity in the city. The room was dark. "Chi kar mikonid?" "What are you doing?" asked the man in the black suit and collarless Iranian shirt. I expected him to stand and in the normal way shake hands and wish me peace. He remained seated. "Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you," I said and sat down. "Wa alaikum assalam, chi kar mikonid?" he repeated quietly, leaning back and running his fat manicured hand along the purple velveteen arm of the sofa. His bouffant hair and goatee were neatly trimmed. I was conscious of not having shaved in 8 weeks. "I've explained what I'm doing many times to His Excellency Yusufi in the Foreign Ministry," I said. "I was told to meet him again now. I am late." A pulse was beating strongly in my neck. I tried to breathe slowly. Neither of us spoke. After a little while I looked away. The thinner man drew out a small new radio, said something into it and straightened his stiff jacket over his traditional shirt. I didn't need to see the shoulder holster. I'd already guessed they were members of the security service. They did not care what I said or what I thought of them. They had watched people through hidden cameras in bedrooms, in torture cells, and on execution grounds. They knew that however I presented myself, I could be reduced. But why had they decided to question me? In the silence I heard a car reversing in the courtyard, and then the first notes of the call to prayer. "Let's go," said the man in the black suit. He told me to walk in front. On the stairs I passed a waiter to whom I had spoken. He turned away. I was led to a small Japanese car parked on the dirt forecourt. The car's paint job was new, and it had been washed recently. They told me to sit in the back. There was nothing in the pockets or on the floorboards. It looked as though the car had just come from the factory. Without saying anything, they turned onto the main boulevard. It was January 2002. The American-led coalition was ending its bombardment of the Tora Bora complex. Osama bin Laden and Mullah Mohammed Omar had escaped. Operations in Gardez were beginning. The new government, taking over from the Taliban, had been in place for 2 weeks. The laws banning television and female education had been dropped. Political prisoners had been released. Refugees were returning home. Some women were coming out without veils. The UN and the US military were running the basic infrastructure and food supplies. There was no frontier guard, and I had entered the country without a visa. The Afghan government seemed to me hardly to exist. Yet these men were apparently well established. The car turned into the Foreign Ministry, and the gate guards saluted and stood back. As I climbed the stairs, I felt that I was moving unnaturally quickly, and that the men had noticed this. A secretary showed us into Mr. Yusufi's office without knocking. For a moment, Yusufi stared at us from behind his desk. Then he stood, straightened his baggy pinstripe jacket and showed the men to the most senior position in the room. They walked slowly on the linoleum flooring, looking at the furniture Yusufi had managed to assemble since he had inherited an empty office. The splintered desk, the 4 mismatched filing cabinets in different shades of olive green, and the stove, which made the room smell strongly of gasoline. The week I had known Yusufi comprised half his career in the Foreign Ministry. A fortnight earlier he had been in Pakistan. The day before he had given me tea and a boiled sweet, told me he admired my journey, laughed at a photograph of my father in a kilt, and discussed Persian poetry. This time he did not greet me, but instead sat in a chair facing me and asked, "What has happened?" Before I could reply, the man with the goatee cut in, "What is this foreigner doing here?" "These men are from the security service," said Yusufi. I nodded. I noticed that Yusufi had clasped his hands together and that his hands, like mine, were trembling slightly. "I will translate to make sure you understand what they are asking," continued Yusufi. "Tell them your intentions exactly as you told me." I looked into the eyes of the man on my left. "I am planning to walk across Afghanistan from Herat to Kabul on foot." I was not breathing deeply enough to complete my phrases. I was surprised they didn't interrupt. "I am following in the footsteps of Babur, the first emperor of Mughal India. I want to get away from the roads. Journalists, aid workers and tourists mostly travel by car, but I—" "There are no tourists," said the man in the stiff jacket who had not yet spoken. "You are the first tourist in Afghanistan. It is midwinter. There are 3 meters of snow on the high passes. There are wolves, and this is a war. You will die, I guarantee. Do you want to die?" "Thank you very much for your advice. I note those 3 points." I guessed from his tone that such advice was intended as an order. "But I have spoken to the cabinet," I said, misrepresenting a brief meeting with a young secretary to the Minister of Social Welfare. "I must do this journey." "Do it in a year's time," said the man in the black suit. He had taken from Yusufi the tattered evidence of my walk across South Asia and was examining it. The clipping from the newspaper in Western Nepal, "Mr. Stewart is a pilgrim for peace." The letter from the Conservator Second Circle Forestry Department, Himachal Pradesh, India. "Mr. Stewart, a Scot, is interested in the environment." From a district officer in the Punjab, and a secretary of the Interior in a Himalayan state, and a chief engineer of the Pakistan Department of Irrigation requesting all executive engineers, XENs, on the lower Bari Doab to assist Mr. Stewart, who will be undertaking a journey on foot to research the history of the canal system. "I have explained this," I added, "to His Excellency the Emir's son, the Minister of Social Welfare, when he also gave me a letter of introduction." "From His Excellency Mirwais?" "Here." I handed over the sheet of letterhead paper I had received from the Minister's secretary. "Mr. Stewart is a medieval antiquary interested in the anthropology of Herat." "But it is not signed." Mr. Yusufi lost the signed copy. Yusufi, who was staring at the ground, nodded slightly. The 2 men talked together for a few minutes. I did not try to follow what they were saying. I noticed, however, they were using Iranian, not Afghan Persian. This, and their clothes and their manner, made me think that they had spent a great deal of time with the Iranian intelligence services. I had been questioned by the Iranians, who seemed to suspect me of being a spy. I did not want to be questioned by them again. The man in the stiff jacket said, "We will allow him to walk to Chachran, but our gunmen will accompany him all the way." Chachran was halfway between Herat and Kabul, and about a fortnight into my journey. The villagers with whom I was hoping to stay would be terrified by a secret police escort. This was presumably the point.